Welcome to the Leaders on Shopify podcast, where merchants, app partners and agencies share what it really takes to significantly scale your Shopify brand. So today we're going to be interviewing Keith Matthews, one of the OGs in the Shopify agency world, who's the founder of Milk Bottle Labs, one of Ireland's most well-respected Shopify agencies, and in fact an agency that has only ever done Shopify. So for the last 10 years, Keith and his team have been 100% focused on building some of the best Shopify experiences, and we're going to be discussing his journey, what makes a good Shopify website, what are the best apps, and from Keith's point of view, he's been in this world right from the start. So I hope you'll really enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Leaders on Shopify. So I'm really pleased to have Keith joining us from Milk Bottle Labs today. So I'll let Keith introduce himself, introduce his business, and then we'll get into all things Shopify.
Man, thanks for having me, John. Thanks for having me. So I own Milk Bottle Labs. We are a kind of a mid-sized agency based in Dublin. We're a Shopify Plus accredited agency, and we're around officially since 2015. I found Shopify around 2010, and then we started as an agency 2015 officially. We actually got accredited in 2014 as an official Shopify expert. And we've been, I suppose, I'm one of the OGs now. We're around, fully operating around 9 years, and the only two pieces of software that we would regard ourselves as experts in is Klaviyo and Shopify, and obviously the two of them go hand in hand. Our customer base is primarily Ireland, the UK, and the East Coast of the States. Although we just launched a store in San Francisco last week, and I personally, I love the platform. It's always getting better. The long term for us is to stay doing exactly what we're doing. So that's us. That's Milk Bottle.
And when you found Shopify, what was it? Because you've been in this world a long time, and what was it that sort of thought, hang on, I'm going to back this horse and I'm going to go all in on Shopify? Because there's lots of other agencies out there who are still thinking, oh, well, maybe we can get more fees if we stay on BigCommerce, or actually we're going to build something really complicated in Magento, although who would do that right now? So what was it for you, and why did you go all in on Shopify?
There's a good question, and you've hit on a couple of things. For me personally, I was 20 years ago, I started buying domain names. And for those who remember, to open a bank account, you had to open your bank account with, let's say, Barclays, and then Barclays would have a merchant account section inside Barclays. So to actually transact online and to set up online was the barriers to entry, back in early 2000s, 1999, 2000 were phenomenal. So I was a relatively young kid just out of university who had a bank of domain names. I started buying domain names 99, 2000. And every time I attempted to launch a business, I was just blocked. You needed to be registered for this, you needed to register for that, you needed to have 2 years bank statements. So I just kind of sat on those domain names, and then I just stayed in touch with tech. I did a postgrad in web development back in 2002, I think. And of course, that was just HTML, So, and I'm not a developer, but interestingly now, with the advent of Claude Code and Lovable, it's interesting how it's such an advantage now that I can actually read code. So then I heard about Shopify. And when I heard about Shopify, that was back in the day when they actually had the number of their customers on the front of the website. So when I found Shopify, they had a ticker and it read, 65,000 customers. And then it moved to 85,000, and then it moved to 100. And I think when it got to 125,000, they took it off the front of the website. Signed up to a trial, and I couldn't believe that you could stitch together payment gateways, stitch together the domain, and within 48 hours, or 3 days to allow the domains in those days to propagate, you had an online store. So what actually happened then was I built a few online stores, and then the partner team reached out to me and said, would you be interested in becoming a Shopify partner? At this stage, it was just a side hustle. My business plan was to actually run some e-commerce stores,
Right, got you.
not become an
And if
agency.
any of them is still going, what was your favorite story of setting up your own stores?
Yeah, at the time, the first store I set up was back in, that was probably maybe 2009, 2010, was a drone store. So I did a deal with the UK agency for DJI. Again, it was a long time ago. It was early days, but all of the transactions were fraudulent. So I had to shut that down, which is funny. I had a toy store, and of course that was going really well. And then during COVID, DPD and British Post were throwing the packages over gates of houses, and they kept breaking. So I had to shut that down because it's too much damage. So I have a store at the moment, a print-on-demand store, kind of a half fashion store, which is run through Printful. And I just made one point as an agency owner, I think you should always have your own store, because the amount of updates on the Shopify platform that are being rolled out right now, like there's a few updates being pushed through the changelog every day, and you've also got Shopify Editions, which is their kind of quarterly announcement where they announce future updates, past updates, and major platform enhancements. So I think the best way to actually learn the platform is to actually have a store.
Yeah, my daughter's got a Shopify store, and she sells scarves and bikinis online. But yeah, just sitting in the background, seeing and having access to and it's one thing working on a client's behalf on a Shopify store, but actually being in the weeds of doing it. So yeah, I think that's excellent advice. Excellent advice.
We've always done it.
Yeah. So, and have you got any? Are you sat on some amazing domains that are going to make you a billionaire one day?
Back in the day, what you did was, when Network Solutions owned the original domain registry for .com. This is, of course, prior to all of the other extensions, to the other TLDs being launched. But I'll shorten this story, but I worked in construction for a long, long time, part-time. And I ended up working quite close to the Ryan family, who are the originators of Ryanair, the airline. And that triggered when I got to know them, and when I was, in their properties or whatever, working in construction, mainly renovating them for a builder that actually lived locally. I actually, would you believe it, the domains that I own the longest are actually connected to the airline industry. So it's not they're not Shopify related, but the advancements in Claude and Lovable are helping me launch them. That's all I'll say. I won't say any more than that. I'll let you know. I'll let you know offline.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know that. So yeah, so I went through a phase of buying domains as well, and I as you know, I've got this charities bike ride, and we're cycling from London to Sydney. I bought loads of cycling related domains years and years ago, and I had one called wearecycling.com, and I also had .com.co.uk, whatever, and I just thought, that we might do some sort of thing, community or podcast or something in the future. Anyway, I got this approach. Actually, you probably get this all the time. Oh, we'd like to buy a domain, or we'd like to look at this. And I was like, oh, are you serious? And you just go back with a much bigger thing. And basically, after a bit of digging, I'd realized that an international government had launched their whole brand of getting everybody cycling around We Are Cycling. They'd already built the brand. They'd already built the branding agency, but they hadn't checked if the domain was available. So anyway,
boys, yeah,
a couple of holidays.
But back just to go back to just to finish the point I was making. Back in the day, of course, you could register a domain name, and Icon or Network Solutions they'd send you a paper invoice.
Oh, yeah.
So you could register a domain name, have a think about it, and then buy it. So many's a drunken night, I'd go home onto a laptop and start buying domain names, but at one point I had 500, but I had to just reduce it because they're now relatively. I mean, if you own 20 or 30 domain names, there's a cost there every year. So.
Oh no, when I went through only 6 months ago and go, I'm never going to use that. Why am I paying I'm just clean all of those up. There's no value in any of these. Just get rid of them. So, but yeah, I think a lot of people in e-commerce have been through that sort of little piece. So I suppose if you're, what we're keen on understanding now, if you're a retailer on Shopify who say they've got to that reasonable scale, they're a few million, maybe 4 or 5 million now, what do you see as like the key apps infrastructure and the challenges when people are getting to that sort of scale? What's your sort of advice around what are the key other apps or other bits of infrastructure that they need to be thinking about to maybe go from 5 to 20 million?
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed with brands that scale, we're working with brands at the moment, and some of them we would have started working with them when they were doing 1 million a year, and now they're doing 30, 40 million. One thing they don't do is invest in people, which is interesting. So, like the successful brands that I know, they make investments in people and they make investments in tech. But the investments in tech for Shopify are a lot less than any other platform. I mean, since day one, we have always put rewind.io into every single build. Because the one weakness of Shopify is any staff, now they have updated the permissions on the store, but staff can still go in and delete data. So, rewind is probably the best insurance policy that you can have for your store.
Yeah.
Now across but there's very, obviously as an agency, we're using GitHub, we're storing everything in a secure repository. That's kind of bog standard right now. But I don't have that much to recommend, to be quite honest with you, John, because Shopify looks after pretty much everything. I mean, the SSL layers on Shopify side. What I would say is protect your data and protect your store by only
And
auditing the right people.
for those listening who aren't familiar with Rewind, can you just sort of explain what it is,
Yeah.
how it works, how you pay for it,
Yeah.
and just how a client would install it?
Yeah. So again, Mike Potter is one of the OGs of the Shopify ecosystem, and he has developed an app. I think it could start free and then go up to maybe $10 a month, and you install it in the store, and then every single day it backs up your inventory numbers, your products, and all of basically your data. Okay, so if somebody goes into the store and maybe maliciously deletes a product or deletes any line of data, your sales history, Shopify doesn't back that up for you. So now, if you're using an agency to manage your store, well, then the agency is obviously using GitHub, and then the last version control is in place.
Or hopefully.
Hopefully, that's one thing that you probably need to check before you talk to an agency. So what Rewind does is you just install it. It's a subscription piece of software, the same as any piece of software, and it just works in the background and it protects your store. And we did have one incident during COVID. I can't quite remember the details of it, but we shut the store down. Shopify Plus store at the time, it was probably doing 5-6 million a year. In the middle of all of the COVID panic, somebody in the team made a mistake. We just logged straight into Rewind. We asked them what time they deleted, and let's say it was 12:01. We just rewound the store back to 12 o'clock, and everything was pushed back into the store. And if you talk to the team at Rewind, we talk to Mike or listen to any of them, the amount of horror stories that they prevent is phenomenal. It's
And
phenomenal.
it could just be human error as well. People in a rush, people under pressure, or doing stuff on their phone. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, if I was to give basic advice, which anybody I suppose can give you, I would stitch Klaviyo into every single build because it works and it's built for Shopify, and Shopify is a major investor in Klaviyo, and that's for a reason. They're very much embedded. And then the only other thing I'd suggest is don't launch a store with without a reviews app. Now that's very basic advice, but in actual fact, those 3 apps will help you go a long, long way.
Yeah. And if as you get bigger, do you need to refine things? Do you need to change things? What are the sort of scaling pains that people have? So selling X 100 products a day, fine. Now we're selling X 1,000 products a day.
Yeah.
What changes?
So in my experience, it's the infrastructure surrounding Shopify that changes. There's a very, very good piece of software. There's a very famous .com called mixgarage.com, which is an auto parts site, which was probably one of the first e-commerce stores ever set up in Ireland, and set up by 2 brothers, the Crean brothers, and they're exporting it all over the world. And during COVID, they created a piece of software called Wave OMS, and that is a very clever piece of software that makes picking product for your Shopify store in your warehouse 10x easier than just printing off the labels and walking around the warehouse. So if you're scaling, you obviously need a physical footprint, but it's the systems around the Shopify store. I mean, I think, that the most famous Shopify stores, I mean, one of them is belonging to one of the Kardashians in the States. I think I heard a number that store is probably doing over 150,000 checkouts per minute on Black Friday. So if you're a Shopify merchant, which is what Shopify refers to the store owners, you really have nothing to fear in terms of scaling the actual platform. It's your physical resources to physically ship and physically store and the logistics that you have to really plan and work out. Shopify, you don't actually have to do anything, So,
No, and I think that's things people sort of think, oh, well, I'm just going to set this up and see what happens. But then what happens when it starts becoming successful? You might have to move out of your garage. And I think now it's the infrastructure. And there's a big debate in brands is, do you use third party or do you try and do it yourself? And at what point do you do that? And there's cost benefits to doing it all.
If I look at, let's say, the top two brands that we look after, one of them has their own staff and warehouse, and they like a personal touch. And the minute that that delivery notification goes out, the customer, they're waiting. They trust the brand and they know that it's going to arrive on time. The other brand, in a similar kind of in a similar vertical, has everything outsourced to a warehouse in the UK, a warehouse in Belfast, and a warehouse in Ireland, and they ship across the world. But that brand that has outsourced everything is also outsourcing a lot of the Shopify management to us, and they're outsourcing all of the aspects of the business. The other brand is scaling at the same pace, and they've taken a completely different decision to do everything in-house. So really, the answer to that question is dependent on your own team structure and your overall strategy to scale. I have seen a lot of brands outsource everything, and then they get to a point where they're losing control, and then they say, hold on a second, let's lease a warehouse, do a costing on it. And a lot of brands take it back in-house.
Yeah, and I think there'll be elements of personal preference, risk, and there probably isn't an exact right or wrong answer. It probably depends on how big the product is, how much is all of that as well. And as we move forward, everybody's getting obsessed with AI, right?
Yes.
It's you can't go to an event now where somebody isn't talking about AI. And if you'd asked me sort of 6-8 months ago, is AI good enough to generate decent creative that you're happy to put on your website and your socials and this, I'd have probably turned up my eyebrows a little bit and said, I'm not sure if it was my brand, I would use it just yet. And we play around with it a lot, but I think just before Christmas, it got a lot better and got really interesting in my opinion. What experience have either Milk Bottle Labs or your clients had in terms of using AI in this whole process around content production?
I think, again, most of the brands that we would work with would be outsourcing that, but there is absolutely no doubt that the agencies they're using have been very upfront with them, and they have told them that they're using AI. So we've used it. I've used it personally, and Google's AI Studio with Nano Banana Pro if you prompt it correctly, there's absolutely no doubt about it that you can get the outcome that you need. One of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of people are copying each other. Okay, so the easiest thing in the world.
It's like an arms race, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I mean, the amount of people that have copied Gymshark is just phenomenal. And, they're still leaders in the field, I think, because they're authentic and because they're not copying anybody. They're creating what the young CEO creates what he wants and what he believes in since the day he ever started. So, I don't think you can get away without using it. I think that it's improved an awful lot. And I think the answer to the question that you mentioned probably is a mixture of the two. Okay. Like if you're a small brand that's getting started and all you're doing is paying Facebook to market, well, then you can probably get away with AI tools. But if you're a big brand, and you've already been using, physical models, for example, if you're a fashion store, I don't think you can just suddenly switch it off and move over to AI, but AI can definitely assist. It's not going to wipe It's not going to wipe that kind of marketing side business out completely. I think it's going to complement it. But the truth is that I don't know the answer to that question right now, John, because that's going to probably change in a month and
Oh,
change in 2 months.
it's
So,
changing all the time. We've got a very interesting client they sell shoes online, right? We did some testing around conversion rates of shoes just as a product shot, or shoes in with people's legs in a situation outside, sort of thing, right? And this sounds obvious to you and me, Keith, but when you've got a shoe on a leg in a situation, it will convert better than just a shoe on a white background. But their whole cost to do all the photo shoots is just prohibitive when you're selling shoes at an average order value of, say, 30, 40 euros. So it's an expensive exercise. So we were testing this hypothesis of, well, can we do this? We tried it last summer, not good enough, right? It just wasn't good enough. We tried it again just before Christmas, and actually we put it in front of the merchandisers and said, well, what do you think? And they're like, yeah, that's good enough. And then I suppose the interesting thing is, how do you then scale that and build that into your sort of process? So you're onboarding a new product onto the website, getting the product shots. Well, right, so now that product shot, we're going to take it from 3 different angles. Then we're going to put it into via some sort of MCP into Nana Banana with our content platform. And then we're just going to programmatically put all the prompts in. And then suddenly we've got all this content.
yeah.
And
John, just to jump in on that, I personally use Lovable. And I mean, now I mentioned the Google AI Studio. Like you could very quickly create that system for yourself, like for the,
that's exactly what they've done.
which
That's
is,
yeah.
yeah. So like for the print on demand store, for example, I use Google AI Studio, but I also have a Lovable system built, which is using multiple different connections to Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT, and Google AI Studio. And it's, I have it prompted or pre-prompted so that if I upload an image, it will create 5 or 6 different versions of that image, all created with AI. And then on download, those images then are the quality of the image is improved as it's downloaded to the computer. So, you know, like, all I need for that particular store is an image, because the Printify app then will create that into a t-shirt or a mug or whatever. And this is low level stuff, but it's actually automation, which, you know, scalable, like larger brands could also use. And I would suspect that that's exactly what the agencies are doing. They're building their own micro apps in house.
Yeah.
And
To speed up processes and systems,
yeah,
and I think the big exciting thing, I'm excited about. So we talk a lot to sort of Google about, and when you talk to Google, the answer is always spend more money on Google, or when you talk to Meta, spend more money on Meta. And some of the large retailers listening to this will resonate with that. And I think they're always pushing YouTube, right? You need to advertise more on YouTube. And I'm sort of thinking, well, is 2026 actually going to be the year that more people can advertise on YouTube? Because I think one of the biggest costs for advertising on YouTube, yeah, the media is expensive, but if you can prove the media works and you hit your ROI or your ROAS or whatever measurement you're doing, the actual big barrier to entry to video ads is creating the video.
yeah.
Right. And I've been seeing so many examples of high quality video ads. And going back to your point before, Keith, about the prompt, if you can prompt, say, VO3 in the Google Studio, Gemini Studio now, properly, even non-creatives, well, I'm a non-creative, I don't want to put you in the same bucket, Keith, but people who are not necessarily naturally creative can produce some half decent stuff. And I think it's going to be interesting to see over time, is that going to unlock opportunities for brands to get more into that sort of upper funnel brand awareness? Because everybody's been fighting at the bottom with PPC for years.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got examples of people using sort of video generation, and what's your view on the growth of YouTube?
Well, you see, we're like, look, there is no doubt about it that YouTube is the channel. It's actually, I kind of find it quite funny sometimes. It is the fastest growing channel out there, and it is replacing people's televisions in houses. I don't watch terrestrial television anymore. I just subscribe to whoever I want to subscribe to, and I watch everything on YouTube. And yet, John, it's the one channel people don't focus on, because what they do is they hold their phone up and take the video and then edit it, probably with AI, and all they have to do is turn the phone around into landscape mode, and then they would have a 2 or 3 minute video for YouTube. So YouTube is still still a massive, massive opportunity. And it's one of the channels that people, I don't know, is it an age thing that Instagram is just cooler and that Facebook is out of preference for most people? But look, if I was giving any advice on this podcast, I'd say to everybody, produce content for YouTube.
Yeah, and I think the unlock at the moment. So we would talk to another retailer that sells sort of fancy high end retailer. They're famous for these handbags, and they were like nervous about AI because it might ruin the product shop. And I get that, especially when you're selling a premium product. And I think a lot of the premium brands will be slower to test and evolve this. But this is quite a premium brand, and what they decided to test as an example was, right, we're still going to do the photo shoot, right, with the model, with the product. But instead of then the next session booking the catwalk or the whatever to do the video shoot, we're not going to do that. We're going to take more photos, and then we're going to feed those photos into AI to create video. And the results are phenomenal. And again, the cost and effort, and so models still doing the work and this, but their overall time of post-production and everything else, and the cost, or they may have made decisions in the past where we're not going to do videos on those products because we're not sure it's worth the effort. Whereas now they can do videos on all their products if they've got the photos.
That's a good approach. One thing I would say about the AI tools is it does become very confusing as to what you should use. My advice to anybody is just to stick with one. So if you look at Claude, Perplexity, Google AI Studio, Lovable, Manus, which has just been bought by
Wow,
Facebook.
everybody's getting excited about Manus at the moment.
Yeah. I used it when it came out first, but when you've got 5 or 6 different subscriptions to 5 or 6 tools that are now all coming up to each other's level, what I would say is to anybody is just to choose one tool and master one of them rather than getting stressed, not knowing what all the others are doing, or, prompting this for Perplexity. But the advantage of Lovable is it's connected to the whole lot of them.
Yeah. And I think also understanding how MCPs work and how you can connect it all together, I think is really important.
Yeah.
My personal choice at the moment, but it will change. Probably next time I see you, it will be. I'll be onto something different. But I think right now for creative, it's Gemini. But for everything else, I'm all in on Claude. Especially now they've got their co-workspace and they've got all this. It's like, and what's pushing it is everybody. Google launched something new, and everybody goes, "Oh well, we're going to." And this time last year, Google, I think, were way behind OpenAI and Claude. But I was actually talking at a conference yesterday on AI, and the interesting thing is 75 to 80% of people are using some form of LLM every day in their work. Most of those aren't on a company paid for subscription, and they don't have the guidelines. They haven't checked their privacy settings, which is a real challenge and worry. The company doesn't necessarily have an AI policy, but the scary fact, Keith, and this goes back to your point about what are the companies that are scaling properly doing? Well, it's actually investing in their people. All right, you were talking about getting good people, investing in their people, and actually, not many companies are investing in proper AI training. And I think part of the challenge is, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, is because they don't know what to train them in. All right,
Yeah.
right. Do we go all in on Claude? Do we go all in on Gemini? We do. Let's pick one as a company and then let's train everybody properly. But you've got Johnny over here saying, "Oh, well, I use Perplexity for this thing," or then you've got someone else go, "Oh, well, I'm going to try out Grok or DeepSeek or this or that."
So just to jump in terms of scalable brands, then, John, and there's a lot that we're talking. Let's say about brands that are growing, brands that are ambitious. Okay, and that's one thing I should have said as well. Brands that are ambitious are generally the ones that are successful, not the brands that are greedy, not the brands that are copying. The brands that are patient and ambitious are the ones that we see successful, and they're the same people that invest. But there's an interesting mantra going around now, or a bit of a commentary about Shopify and AI. And Shopify is all in on AI. I mean, Shopify, you can build sections in their standard themes, their free themes using AI, and we can see it drip feed into the platform. But one thing I would say is, and again, back to my point about the systems around Shopify are changing. But if I was doing 5 or 10 million on Shopify, I wouldn't be handing any of it over to AI. I'd still be investing in the humans and training the humans to use the tools correctly.
I think that's it. Yeah. I also think, and your thing about ambitious, I think the other word we need to use for the successful leaders is curious, right? So they need to be curious about what's coming and be excited and understand, well, how's this going to work across my business? So One thing in AI, and one thing I think Shopify are on the front foot with, is this whole UCP Google relationship of like, we're going to enable you to buy if you're on Shopify. Do we know when it's coming to Europe yet, where we can just switch it on?
No, we have used it. We have developer access to it, and we set up on two of our biggest stores. We set up. We did a search, and we successfully purchased through Shop. So we have developer access to it. And look, there's no doubt about it. It's very obvious what's going to happen. Is that the ChatGPTs of the world and Claude are going to switch on advertising. And this platform that Shopify have helped build along with Microsoft and ChatGPT and OpenAI, it will become the standard for many people. But the problem is there's a 4% surcharge in every transaction that goes through AI.
This came up in a conversation I had the other day, and I was actually with Emma Jones, who's advising business on agentic commerce. And in the room were like the PayPals of the world, Meta, everybody. Right? I don't know why I got invited, but it was quite nice to be in the room. And
because you're very good at what you do, John. That's probably why you're invited.
Oh, you too, Keith. But it was the knowledge around this, and it's all out there. You can go read it. But even from some of the big brands, they're like, "Oh no, well, it's just like free." I'm like, "No, it's not free. Right? It's just like a super affiliate program. And it's super clever, and I get it." So for those who aren't familiar with UCP and what is going to happen and how's it going to work, can you just give us a bit of an explanation from your point of view when you've tested it? What was involved from putting it on the merchant site to then what happened when I was in the LLM?
Yeah, so I haven't seen it on the merchant site, but I'll explain the brief history of it. Shopify got together with Microsoft and OpenAI and a couple of other tech companies, and they basically created a kind of a world standard, right, called the Universal Commerce Protocol. And what it basically means is that if you search inside ChatGPT, primarily it's open to US businesses, your search comes up, it's surfaced the very same way as it would be in Google, but Google will send you to the website or the Shopify store. But if you click on, if you search for Gymshark, let's reference Gymshark again. So you search for a Gymshark hoodie. When that hoodie is surfaced in ChatGPT through OpenAI, instead of you clicking on the image or the link and going to the Shopify store, it bypasses it and you go straight to a checkout inside ChatGPT. You put your details in and you purchase the product. And the transaction goes through Shopify's ShopPay app, which is, I think there's about 160 million people now using that. So the customer never sees your store. So from a merchant point of view, a store owner, that means then there is absolutely no opportunity to maybe upsell them something else. I didn't see any subscribe, or I didn't see any details on how a user would subscribe or sign up to further updates, that kind of thing. So basically what they're doing is they're removing friction, right? Which is ironic because Shopify have actually made the purchase process using the ShopPay app probably the most frictionless purchasing experience for most people, because now you can go into a Shopify store and check out with 2 clicks. What OpenAI have done is they've taken that away and they've created it now, and they've basically removed the step to visit the merchant store, as I said, which means now your traffic is going to go down. Your sales, more than likely when this kicks off, will go up, but the transaction fee is 4% on top of Shopify fees, on top of more than likely you'll have to now advertise on the LLMs as well. So there's a whole other channel. And to be quite honest with you, it's a tax on the Shopify merchant.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because I think people will probably take the view of we've got to be seen to be in there and at least learn and try. But then they'll start looking at their customer acquisition costs and go, well, can we justify that? Or actually, can we just limit the inventory that we put in because we've got the margin, versus actually we don't want to put that inventory in because we don't have the margin? And there was a part of a discussion I was involved with the other week, and I sort of like the idea of this, but this is maybe a bit fanciful. But will we end up with retailers in the future that don't have a physical store and don't have a physical website? They just have basically a connection to the LLMs and they just ship products.
Yeah. That's probably there, but it's probably That's probably a long way away, because like I don't know how quickly it's just going to take over. I mean, there's certain people of a certain demographic or a certain age that would never buy off OpenAI. And it has to be tried and tested. So none of us can predict the future, but whether that's 12 months or 5 years, I don't know. But
Yeah,
ultimately what will more than likely happen is that you'll just have to have both,
yeah.
but there probably, John, there probably will be brands. I remember back in the day, agencies designed stores mobile first. I mean, maybe there will be businesses there that will be LLM first. Maybe.
And I think it's going to be interesting. And again, if you think about it, if you're trying to build your own brand, it's probably not for you. But if you're a reseller of other people's brands and someone's just trying to find the cheapest Nike Air Jordans in size 9, whatever version, flavor, in whatever color, and you've got a warehouse full of them, well,
Mm.
do you need a website and do you need a physical shop? Well, if there's enough traffic and enough demand and you're making it easier for the customer, who knows? It'd be I think it's going to be an interesting space to watch. And if you're in that enterprise space now, understanding where UCP fits into your model is really key. And I suppose
100%.
modeling out all
Yeah.
of this. And I suppose also then coming on to sort of measuring it, because you'll have no impression, you'll have no click, you'll just have a sale.
Yeah.
Right. So that won't
Yeah.
appear in your GA4. And
Yeah.
it won't appear, it will appear in your Shopify analytics, but then what we've seen at the sort of enterprise level, most people are extracting stuff into some form of different type of analytics platform or some sort of different app so they can join it all together. So just go back to your point about advertising. So OpenAI, so we had a client going, I want to advertise on OpenAI. I've seen they're letting people advertise on OpenAI. I want to do it. So the agency guys contacted OpenAI, £50,000 a month minimum spend.
Stop. Are you serious? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. So that's going to be, I don't know, your Unilevers, your Coca-Colas, but
Yeah.
I would have potentially looked at it the other way. And I don't know if that's just they haven't got the tech set up, but from what I understand, it's going to go. I think the work that the ad platform they're using, maybe they're worried it won't be able to scale in the right way. And then there was the other one in the Super Bowl final where Claude took that massive ad. I don't know if you've seen it, say, we're never going to advertise. Well, how sustainable that is. And everybody's sort of saying Claude are going more after the enterprise work tool and almost taking on like joining up and being the glue that pulls together Office and all your other stuff and sitting in the middle and just being this thing that makes you be more productive.
You'd wonder, if you look at what Shopify have done over the last 10 years, eating Magento's lunch and eating WordPress's lunch, and it is now becoming and obviously it is, big commerce at one stage was probably their potential threat up to a few years ago. It's not now. You'd wonder really, if you look at all the LLMs, would it come down to one or two, or is there room for all of them seem to be doing the same thing and announcing the same thing a month after each other?
Well, the interesting one, there's what's it called? Suno, the music app. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Right, but then Google last week launched a music app, right, inside Gemini. So who's going to pay a separate subscription?
Yeah.
Right. So it is going to be interesting, sort of how it all works and plays out.
And that narrative at the moment around this, I don't know whether you've been following it, but the narrative at the moment in the last 4 weeks has been the death of SaaS.
Yeah,
So
I think another thing. I think it's more about what is the function of your SaaS, and is it doing what problem is it solving? Right, because there's this argument everybody's just going to build everything themselves. Well, how secure is that? How scalable is that? What infrastructure is that on? What happens if the person who built it leaves? Who's going to update it? So I think depending on the function and the content of what the SaaS is doing, I think the answer with all of that depends.
Yeah, and you made an interesting point there about doing it yourself. Like, it's people like me and you that would consider doing it yourself, but that's probably only a few percent of the population. I see it the other way. I see it that it's a massive opportunity for SaaS that doesn't even exist right now for people without funding to actually deliver it, and I think there's a massive opportunity out there.
Oh no!
Although,
are we going to see a 2-person unicorn?
well, that's again, you're watching YouTube like me. It will happen.
Yeah,
it will happen. I don't know whether it's going to happen today or tomorrow, but Now, I don't know how one or two people could do it, but certainly 10.
Yeah. So you
You know?
mentioned a couple of apps like Klaviyo but what are the other killer secret apps that you would recommend to larger? Are there anything else out there that you'd recommend?
You know what, John? If you asked me that question 3 years ago, I probably would have come up with a list. But I mean, there's probably 20,000 apps in the App Store at the moment on Shopify, and they're publishing reviews. Some of them are giving you, better analytics, better reporting. I mean, there's no secrets out there now because everybody's all in on it. Um, and to be honest with you, as an agency, we pride ourselves in not adding apps. We'll customize the store to be as beautiful as possible. We're not going to put an app into, for example, to add a section or change anything on the store. We'll code it, push it live and reduce the amount of redundant code on the store. So I think the average Shopify store has, at one point, was 16 apps. So like of those 16, there's email, there's reviews, there's the backup app Rewind that I mentioned. There's actually no secrets out there. Everybody's all over it.
Yeah.
I wish I could answer better, but I don't have a secret.
No. It's just interesting, and it's
Yeah.
like the Shopify app. Yeah, there's tens of thousands. What I think has been interesting in the last 6 months is this shift towards built for Shopify, and
Yes.
they're trying to sift out, right, these are the ones that are really enterprise level, and I think that's quite an interesting move around I think Shopify's also got a problem like dormant apps that don't work, apps have got bad reviews. They've created this sort of cleaning up process that needs to go on. And then who are the real big brands that when you're building stuff for your clients that you sort of look up to? You mentioned Gymshark before. If you had to name 2 or 3 other brands, and you can give your clients a plug if they're the ones you're looking up to, but who are the sort of 3 or 4 inspirational brands in Shopify?
Yeah, I love Gymshark. To me, it represents everything. In the old days, I don't know whether you remember this or not, but the promotional videos on YouTube for Shopify were all based on originators, people with original ideas, crafters, handmade product. And when Toby started Shopify, he genuinely did want to open it up to small to medium businesses, and he wanted them to be able to sell online. And the Gymshark story, to me, really does represent everything about Shopify that I even remember in the old days. I'm not into makeup, but you have to look at the Kardashian family and their success. And there's an Irish brand, and they're on Shopify. They have nothing to do with Milk Bottle. I won't take any credit. It's a wonderful young woman called Amy Connolly who runs a business called Sculpted by Amy, and she has built a beautiful brand, scaled it on Shopify, and she has competed in retail again against some of the biggest makeup brands. And when you're living in Ireland, the majority of the largest makeup brands are actually UK based. So that'll be Sculpted by Amy. And then we work with a wonderful brand called Ella and Joe, which is a skincare brand. And they've done the very, very same. They've originated in the west of Ireland, and they're shipping all over the world. There's a couple of brands that I genuinely look up to. If you go onto those sites, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like their stores, but their stores are successful and they're selling their own product. So I have a little bit more respect for people that created themselves, basically.
Yeah, and it's like, what can you learn from that? And so there's like so many different nuances. We had a podcast recently with the guys from Small who do the more green, like home detergents and dishwasher tablets and stuff, and just how they're looking at like customer flows and process customer acquisition and everything. It's just fascinating, getting really into the detail of everything. And then, right, so if I'm a big brand and I'm thinking I need to change my agency and my Shopify support, why would I consider Milk Bottle Labs, and what are you amazing at?
Yeah. So the one thing I think, and this, I'll answer this for general agencies. Like when I look at agencies, I look at successful agencies. The first agency that I ever saw that I really wanted to be like was an agency I think they're in Ottawa. They were one of the first Shopify agencies called Pointer Creative. And that was run by a guy called Chris Pointer. And I met him. I couldn't believe it. I met him at one of the Shopify events in Toronto a few years back. And basically, you just need to trust people. So, like, would you trust me with your bank account details? Is the question that I would ask anybody. Or would you trust Chris Pointer? Would you trust Alex and the guys that set up, We Make Websites, obviously one of the most famous agencies in London. And all of these people have something in common, and they're trusted. Because when you begin to engage with a client, if a client is doing $2,000 a month because it's a side hustle and it's scaling, or a client is doing, 5 million a year or 6 million a year, at the end of the day, you have to respect that client to the same level as an agency owner. We don't measure people based on their turnover per month. We measure them based on their personality and their ambition, and are they a good fit? The one thing that we always get back is trust, because when you do start to scale and when you do start to ship more products, the agency that you're working with is effectively embedded in your business. And people lean on us and depend on us. So over the years, we've evolved into Shopify only. So only Shopify, only Klaviyo. Anything to do with Google Analytics, anything to do with paid media, I would advise everybody to have a separate agency to do that. Google's ecosystem is changing so quickly, and the Shopify ecosystem is changing so quickly. You need experts in each lane. That's just my personal opinion. Rather than giving somebody one check to do absolutely everything. That's just,
Okay,
that's
good.
my view.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, Keith, and some real excellent insights in there. And hopefully you'll be working with Gymshark and doing all that for them too.
No, I can't remember the agency that was working with them. Oh, I've caught off guard, but he was a great guy in the UK. And he built Victoria Beckham's site, actually. If you want to have a look at some beauty, have a look at that Shopify store. I can't think of his name. His name escapes me, but a lot of people will know exactly what I'm talking about. But John,
if people want to get in touch with you, where can we find Milk Bottle Labs? Where can we find you? What are they? Where would we go?
Very simple, milkbottle.ie or Google Milk Bottle Labs. We would love to work with ambitious brands. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for the chat.
Thank you for listening to today's Leaders on Shopify podcast, which was sponsored by Ask Bosco AI Analytics and Insights. To find out more about Ask Bosco, visit askbosco.io or search Ask Bosco in the Shopify App Store.